It's tempting to think modern medicine has always been safe and guided by compassion. But that trust, that belief doctors first do no harm, was forged in tragedy. Behind every law about consent, every hospital ethics board are real human stories. Experiments done without permission, secrets kept for decades, suffering that changed the world. Tonight, on Silent Shadows of History, we count down the top 10 unethical medical experiments, global events so disturbing they forced medicine to rewrite its moral code. Some began with curiosity, others with war. All left a mark far beyond the laboratory. Number 10. The Radium Girls, United States, 1910s to 1930s. Imagine being 19 years old and landing a glamorous job in a watch factory. The work feels safe, even chic. You paint fine numbers on luminous dials, your lips shaping the brush to a perfect point, each stroke glowing faintly in the dark. Radium was marketed as a miracle. Ads promised vitality, even immortality. But radium was silently eating the women's bones. Symptoms appeared slowly: aching jaws, teeth falling out, strange anemia. Company doctors denied a connection. Managers told them to keep painting. Some women were fired for complaining, others died without answers. Yet the Radium Girls, as newspapers called them, refused to stay silent. Through lawsuits and public testimony, they forced the United States to establish worker protections and radiation safety standards that still save lives today. Number 9. The Monster Study, United States, 1939. In the depths of the Great Depression, a speech researcher in Iowa had a hypothesis. Could stuttering be created by suggestion alone? 22 orphaned children, already vulnerable, became subjects. Half received supportive therapy. The other half were harshly criticized, told they spoke incorrectly and shamed for errors. What happened next was heartbreaking. Kids who spoke normally became fearful and withdrawn. Some developed lifelong anxiety about speaking. The experiment remained hidden for decades. Records surfaced in the 2000s and triggered public outrage. This story reshaped research standards for minors and underscored how psychological harm is as real as physical harm. Number 8. Unit 731, Japan, 1930s to 1945. World War II created a hidden empire of cruelty in northeastern China. There, Imperial Japan built a covert research base known as Unit 731. To the outside world, it was for disease prevention. Inside, it was human experimentation. Prisoners of war and civilians were infected with deadly pathogens to observe the course of disease. Extreme cold was used to study frostbite. Men's arms plunged into ice water and exposed to winter air until skin froze solid. Some were subjected to surgery without anesthesia under the guise of live dissection. The intent was military: better biological weapons, better survival knowledge for Japanese soldiers. But it caused immense suffering and death. After Japan's surrender, some leaders of Unit 731 avoided prosecution, trading their data to Allied powers hungry for wartime science. Global outrage over these crimes fed directly into post-war codes, including the Nuremberg Code, defining voluntary consent and humane treatment as non-negotiable. Number 7. The aversion experiments on LGBTQ+ individuals, mid-20th century global. For decades, medical authorities in many countries believed they could cure homosexuality. Techniques included electric shock while showing same-sex images, nausea-inducing drugs, and chemical castration. Patients, often admitted involuntarily or pressured by families, were subjected to psychological and physical trauma disguised as therapy. South Africa's military hospitals in the 1970s ran covert programs to rehabilitate gay conscripts. In the UK, electric aversion therapy was offered well into the 1970s. Even in the US, until the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuality as a disorder in 1973, some clinics promoted these methods. Survivors spoke of deep shame, depression, and loss of trust in medicine. Their stories later fueled activism that helped remove pathologizing diagnoses and strengthen patient rights to refuse harmful treatment. Number 6. The Guatemalan Syphilis Study. Guatemala, 1946 to 1948. After World War II, U.S. public health researchers went to Guatemala to test new ways to prevent and treat sexually transmitted infections. They recruited vulnerable groups, prisoners, soldiers, psychiatric patients, often without any real consent. Participants were intentionally exposed to syphilis, gonorrhea, and chancroid through contact with infected sex workers or direct inoculation. Some were later treated with penicillin, others were not. Many never knew they'd been made ill for research. This project was hidden for decades and came to light only in 2010. The U.S. government formally apologized and lawsuits followed. It remains a stark example of exploitation across borders and of the need for global ethical oversight, not just domestic laws. Number 5. The MK-Ultra Mind Control Experiments. United States, 1950s to 1970s. During the Cold War, the CIA launched a secret program called MK-Ultra. Its aim: explore mind control, truth serums, and psychological manipulation to gain an edge over perceived Soviet threats. The program covertly dosed unwitting people with LSD and other drugs. Safe houses and hospitals served as testing grounds. Some participants were psychiatric patients, prisoners, or members of marginalized groups. Side effects were sometimes severe and long-lasting. Only after journalists and congressional hearings in the 1970s did the scope of MK-Ultra become public. It pushed the U.S. to strengthen rules about informed consent and limit secret government research on civilians. Number 4. The Willowbrook Hepatitis Studies. United States, 1950s to 1970s. At Willowbrook State School in New York, a facility for children with developmental disabilities, researchers studied hepatitis transmission. Because the disease was already common in the overcrowded school, investigators deliberately infected new admissions under the claim of studying and preventing outbreaks. Parents were sometimes pressured to agree. Admission to the institution might depend on signing a consent form that few truly understood. While some data improved hepatitis vaccines later, the ethical breach was enormous, exposing children to harm without real protection or clear permission. This case was widely cited in debates leading to the creation of the National Research Act and modern institutional review boards. Number 3. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, United States, 1932 to 1972. In Macon County, Alabama, hundreds of black men were enrolled in a government study of untreated syphilis. They were told they were receiving free medical care for bad blood, but in reality, treatment was deliberately withheld, even after penicillin became the accepted cure. Decade after decade, the men were examined but not helped. Many suffered severe complications. Some died, and their families were also affected. It wasn't until a whistleblower went to the press in 1972 that the public learned the truth. The outrage was massive. Tuskegee became a turning point, leading to the Belmont Report and strict rules about informed consent, fairness, and protection for vulnerable groups. It also left deep scars of mistrust toward the medical system that persist today. Number 2. Nazi experiments at concentration camps. Europe, 1940 to 1945. Under the Nazi regime, physicians conducted horrific human experiments in camps like Dachau and Auschwitz. Victims, Jews, Romani people, prisoners of war, and others were subjected to freezing, hypothermia, deliberate injury, forced exposure to poisons and infections, and other brutal procedures. The goal was often military advantage or racial pseudoscience, not healing. These crimes shocked the world when evidence surfaced after liberation. The Nuremberg trials prosecuted many of the perpetrators and produced the Nuremberg Code, the first modern blueprint for ethical human research, voluntary consent, risk limits, and the right to withdraw. Number 1. Holmesburg Prison Experiments, United States, 1951 to 1974. While the Nazi crimes were uncovered and prosecuted, one of the longest-running U.S. programs happened quietly at home. The Holmesburg Prison Experiments in Philadelphia. Prisoners, mostly black men and the poor, were paid small sums to test everything from skin creams to dioxin, radioactive isotopes, and mind-altering drugs. Many didn't understand the risks. Some suffered lasting damage. The program ran for more than 2 decades under dermatologist Albert Kligman and was backed by industry and military sponsors. It ended only after lawsuits and public criticism in the 1970s. Holmesburg, Tuskegee, Willowbrook, together they showed that abuses weren't confined to dictatorships or war. They could happen quietly, under respected institutions, unless ethics were enforced. We've traveled through a dark record, curiosity and power unchecked, human lives treated as data points. But these stories forced medicine to change. The Nuremberg Code, the Belmont Report, institutional review boards, and informed consent protections grew from tragedy. Yet the work is never done. Even today, debates over privacy, genetic research, and experimentation on vulnerable populations remind us that ethical lines can blur. Remember the Radium Girls, the orphans of Iowa, the prisoners, the soldiers, the children. Their suffering built the guardrails that now protect us. History's darkest chapters teach medicine's most vital lesson. Patients are people first, and their dignity is not optional. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to Silent Shadows of History for more long-form explorations of the past's hidden shadows, so we never forget why ethics matter.